It's always interesting to watch a clash of styles in chess. This game is no exception. The normal clash of styles is a positional versus tactical player, but in this game we see a creative genius, Daniil Dubov, versus the speed demon, Nihal Sarin. And the game ends absolutely brilliantly, showing why you can't just play your moves quickly and hope to win. We see Dubov opens with d4, and we end up with a pretty standard Queen's Gambit accepted. These are all the normal moves. e3, e6, of course recapturing the pawn, and Sarin lashes back in the center with c5. Of course, he doesn't mind about this trade in the center, or just leave Dubov with better central control. As they always say, control the center, control the game. So we see a6 going for some b5 ideas, and Dubov continues stranded with queen to e2. We see b5, of course, the idea of a6 justifying his previous move. Bishop comes back to d3, looks a little bit passive, and as bishop is controlling some very important squares, and also put a bit of pressure on Sarin's king if he decides to castle kingside. So of course captures. Instead of capturing back, Dubov instead decides to sacrifice that pawn. But unfortunately, Sarin denies the sacrifice. I believe if takes, there's an interesting line. You've got a takes b5. And basically the idea is to break up this queen side. Of course, you can't recapture because the rook would drop. So quite interesting sacrifice, but quite a long line that leads to white having a small edge. But just an interesting pawn sacrifice to perhaps get Sarin out of prep if he hadn't seen the variation before. But Sarin doesn't decide to accept the sacrifice. He decides to take on a4, and then Dubov recaptures with the rook. Again, giving up the pawn, but with these active pieces as compensation. The rook is now in the game, maybe it can swing over, and also Dubov has 3 pieces out and his castle compared to Sarin just having this one lonely knight sitting on f6. We see bishop to e7, a little bit of inaccuracy according to the engine. I'm not sure what Sarin could have played. Yeah, I guess the engine's saying he should have in fact taken on e3 just to consolidate his material advantage. Dubov continues, rook takes d4, hitting the queen. Queen slides to b6, the best move, and we see Dubov gets his knight into the game. Sarin decides to develop his knight, finally getting some pieces into the game, but it's almost too little too late. White has a small edge here that he's just going to continue to grind up for the rest of the game, but we do see a stunning finish, as I mentioned before. Sarin brings that rook over to h4, as I said, swinging that rook over to the king side, and now this h7 pawn is under a bit of pressure. If this knight ever gets extracted from the f6 position, that h7 pawn is going to be extremely weak and is very liable to being captured, and with checkmate probably soon to follow. We see bishop to b7, Sarin trying to put a bit of pressure on Dubov's king, but Dubov's having none of it. Knight to c4, hitting the queen moves back, and again, bishop to d2, getting a further piece into the game. Sarin decides to castle, and we see bishop to c3 by Dubov again now, lining up these 2 beautiful bishops right on this king, ready to start a massive attack. So g6, trying to blunt that light square bishop, obviously a bit of a demon bishop. We see knight g5 by Dubov, immediately attacking, continuing, trying to make use of these weakened dark squares around the king. Just getting knight in there to complicate matters and maybe take on f6 at the right time. And here Sarin decides to go knight to d5, trying to trade off that strong dark square bishop. He missed an absolutely incredible resource. In this position, Dubov plays the beautiful move, queen to h5. A full queen sacrifice, but you cannot take that queen. If you decide to take that queen right away, you're just going to run into bishop to h7, checkmate on the black king with just the minor pieces. Such a rare sacrifice to see. If you decide to play the best move, I think the engine's saying knight to f6, you can just continue with taking that knight, and if the bishop decides to recapture, you've again got checkmate here. I believe the best move is h6, trying to stem the bleeding a little bit, but it's still checkmate in 5 moves. With queen takes h6, is just basically prolonging the mate, kind of engine stuff. And again, a few more checks just to sort of prolong the game. Bishop takes f6, and finally queen to h7 with checkmate. A beautiful, stunning game, displaying the clash of styles in chess, and a beautiful sacrifice to boot. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that one, and I'll see you in the next video.